Chapter 1. The Silent Piano. The city lay wrapped in winter's hush, its streets coated in a thick layer of pristine snow. Frost clung to the lampposts like delicate lace, and the distant sound of carolers melted into the night air. Christmas lights flickered in warm, golden hues, illuminating the darkened windows of shops that had long since closed for the evening. But amidst the festive glow, Anna walked alone, her breath rising in ghostly wisps as she pulled her coat tighter around her. Her steps were measured, careful, as if the snow beneath her boots might shatter like fragile glass. She had not meant to wander so far, but the silence of the evening had drawn her in, pulling her away from the crowded streets, from the weight of memories pressing against her chest. It had been years since she last touched a piano, years since the music that once defined her had fallen into silence. Now, she could not even look at a set of ivory keys without feeling the sharp sting of the past. The cold wind howled down the alleyways, urging her forward until she found herself before an old music shop at the corner of a forgotten street. Its wooden sign, half covered in frost, bore the name Whitmore's Instruments. The large window display, though covered in dust, still revealed a collection of violins, cellos, and a grand piano pushed toward the back, its surface hidden beneath a thin veil of time. Something about it called to her, a whisper in the stillness of the night. Anna hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, the warmth from inside brushing against her frozen skin. A flickering light glowed from within, casting long shadows against the walls lined with sheet music and instruments waiting to be played. She stepped inside, the small brass bell above the door tinkling softly. The scent of aged wood and forgotten melodies enveloped her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something stirred deep within her chest. Then a voice, low, rich, unexpected, broke the silence. "You shouldn't be out in the cold." Anna turned sharply. A man stood near the counter, his hands dusted with varnish, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms lightly smudged with ink and wood shavings. His presence was solid, grounded, as if he belonged to this place as much as the instruments themselves. His gaze met hers, dark eyes filled with quiet intensity, and she felt a strange pull, like the opening notes of an unfinished song. "I didn't mean to intrude," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. He studied her for a moment before wiping his hands on a rag and nodding toward the grand piano in the back. "You play?" Anna hesitated, her pulse quickening. "Not anymore." Something flickered across his face. Understanding, perhaps, or curiosity, but he did not press. Instead, he turned and walked toward the piano, brushing off the dust with careful hands. "It hasn't been played in years," he said, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "But I think it's waiting for someone." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She could feel the music lingering in the air, woven into the very walls of this place. And yet, she remained rooted to the floor, her past too heavy to lift. The man, sensing her hesitation, simply offered a small, knowing smile. "My name's Liam," he said, as if that alone might bridge the distance between them. Anna exhaled, her fingers twitching at her sides. She had not played in years. She had vowed never to play again. But standing here, in this forgotten shop with a stranger who spoke the language of music, she wasn't so sure anymore. Outside, the snow continued to fall, a silent melody of its own. And for the first time in a long time, Anna listened. Chapter 2. Echoes of a Forgotten Melody. The wind howled through the narrow streets, swirling the snow in ghostly spirals as the city drifted deeper into the cold embrace of winter. Inside Whitmore's Instruments, the air was warmer, thick with the scent of aged wood and something else, something intangible, like the lingering presence of forgotten music. Anna stood motionless near the doorway, her breath uneven as she took in her surroundings. The shop was more than just a collection of instruments. It was a monument to the past. Each violin, each cello, each grand piano holding echoes of melodies played long ago. She could almost hear them, ghostly notes suspended in the air, whispering secrets only she could understand. Liam watched her carefully from behind the counter, his dark eyes quietly assessing the woman who had wandered into his shop on a cold December night. There was something about her, something restrained yet deeply familiar. He had seen that same expression before, on the faces of musicians who had lost themselves, not in music, but in silence. "You look like someone searching for something," he said finally, his voice breaking the hush. Anna startled slightly at the sound. She turned toward him, shaking her head. "I was just passing by." Liam didn't press. Instead, he moved past her toward the grand piano at the back of the store. He ran his fingers along the lid, brushing away a fine layer of dust. "This belonged to my grandfather," he murmured. "It hasn't been played in years." Anna swallowed, her gaze drawn to the instrument against her will. Even beneath the dust, it was beautiful, an old Baldwin, its polished mahogany surface dulled by time. Something about it stirred a memory deep within her, a sensation so sudden it made her fingers twitch at her sides. She took a hesitant step forward. "Why?" Liam exhaled, leaning against the piano. He was a luthier, but he loved the piano most of all. After he passed, no one played it. "It's just been here, waiting. The word struck something inside Anna, sending a tremor through her chest. She knew that feeling too well, the weight of something abandoned, something left behind, yet never truly gone. Her fingers curled into fists. Not everything is meant to be played again. Liam tilted his head slightly, studying her with quiet curiosity. Maybe some things are just waiting for the right hands. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the distant ticking of the old wall clock above the register. Anna tore her gaze away from the piano and turned toward the door. "I should go." Liam didn't stop her, but as she reached for the handle, his voice cut through the stillness. "Do you know what happens when a melody is left unfinished?" Anna hesitated. She knew. She had lived it. Slowly, she turned back to face him. "It lingers." A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at Liam's lips. He nodded, as if she had given the only answer he had expected. "Exactly." Anna said nothing more. She pushed open the door, stepping out into the cold night as the snow continued to fall. But even as she walked away, the echoes of a forgotten melody trailed behind her, soft, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Chapter 3: A Storm and a Stranger. The wind howled like a restless ghost through the narrow streets of the city, carrying with it a flurry of snow that blurred the world into a hazy swirl of white. The storm had arrived with an unforgiving force, erasing the once familiar paths beneath thick blankets of ice and snow. The streetlights flickered, their glow struggling against the darkness, casting long, eerie shadows on the deserted roads. Anna pulled her coat tighter around herself, her fingers numb even through her gloves. She hadn't expected the storm to hit this hard, nor had she anticipated being stranded in the middle of the city with nowhere to go. Her plan had been simple: buy a few supplies and return to the small apartment she had rented for the holidays. But the unforgiving weather had other plans. Her boots crunched against the frozen ground as she trudged forward, the cold seeping into her bones with every step. Her breath came in uneven puffs, curling like ghostly wisps in the air. She glanced around, her heart sinking at the realization that she was utterly alone. The shops had long since closed, their windows dark and lifeless, and the streets were void of any sign of warmth. Then, through the thick curtain of snow, she saw it, a faint glow spilling from an old storefront. The sign above the door was weathered, its letters barely visible beneath layers of frost, but she could still make them out. Whitmore and Sons, Fine Instruments. A music shop. Something stirred deep within her, an old ache she had long tried to bury. She hesitated at the threshold, the cold pressing against her back, urging her forward. The door was slightly ajar, the warm light inside spilling out like an invitation. Anna pushed it open. The scent of aged wood and varnish wrapped around her like an old melody, familiar and bittersweet. The shop was small but filled with instruments of all kinds, violins resting against the walls, guitars hanging from the ceiling, and pianos standing solemnly in the corners like forgotten relics of a bygone era. At the far end of the shop, a man stood behind the counter, his head bent over a violin, his fingers tracing the delicate curves of the instrument with the precision of someone who knew its soul. He hadn't noticed her yet, lost in his world, the soft hum of a tune barely escaping his lips. Anna cleared her throat, and the man looked up. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. His eyes, a deep shade of green, flickered with surprise, then curiosity. He was younger than she had expected, his dark hair tousled as if he had run his fingers through it one too many times. "Sorry, Anna hesitated. "I saw the light. The storm outside. I didn't know where else to go." The man set the violin down carefully, his movements deliberate, as if every gesture carried meaning. "You shouldn't be out in this weather." His voice was smooth but held an edge of concern. "The roads are completely blocked. The city's shutting down for the night." Anna swallowed, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "I didn't realize it would be this bad." He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the fireplace in the corner, where a soft fire crackled. "You should warm up." She hesitated only a second before stepping closer, allowing the heat to chase away the cold that clung to her like a second skin. The warmth was almost overwhelming, making her shiver as her body adjusted. "Do you work here?" she asked, glancing at the instruments around them. The man leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "I own the place," he said simply. "Liam Whitmore." Whitmore. The name sent a flicker of recognition through her, though she couldn't place why. "Anna," she replied. "Anna Carter." He nodded, as if testing the name in his mind. "You play?" Anna stiffened. It was a simple question, yet it carried more weight than it should have. "I used to." Liam didn't press for more, but something in his gaze told her he had caught the hesitation in her voice. Instead, he turned toward the back of the shop, motioning for her to follow. "You can stay here until the storm dies down," he offered. "It's safer than being out there." Anna hesitated, glancing toward the door where the wind howled mercilessly. She didn't have much of a choice. As she followed Liam deeper into the shop, past rows of violins and forgotten sheet music, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into a place where time had stopped. And as her gaze landed on the piano in the corner, covered in dust yet exuding an undeniable presence, she felt something stir inside her. A whisper of a melody long forgotten. Chapter 4. The Shop of Lost Sounds. The warmth of the fire seeped into Anna's skin, thawing the lingering cold that had settled deep in her bones. The crackling of the flames was the only sound filling the air, aside from the occasional whistle of wind slipping through the cracks of the old music shop. The storm outside raged on, an unrelenting force that had swallowed the city whole. Liam had disappeared into the back of the shop, leaving Anna alone with the silent instruments surrounding her. She let her gaze wander over the wooden shelves lined with old sheet music, their pages yellowed with time. Guitars, violins, and cellos stood in quiet rows, each carrying the echoes of past melodies. And then there was the piano, standing solemnly in the corner, its keys veiled beneath a thin layer of dust. She took a step toward it, hesitating as an old familiar ache bloomed in her chest. Her fingers twitched at her sides. It had been years since she had touched a piano, years since she had allowed herself to feel the weight of music under her hands. She reached out, brushing her fingertips against the wooden frame, tracing the curve of the instrument as if reacquainting herself with an old friend. "You can play if you want to," Liam's voice broke the silence, making her flinch. She turned to find him leaning against the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. He had removed his coat, his sweater sleeves pushed up to his elbows, revealing forearms dusted with fine wood shavings. There was something about him that seemed as worn as the shop itself, like a man who had spent years mending things that others had abandoned. "I don't play anymore," Anna said quickly, withdrawing her hand from the piano as if it had burned her. Liam tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You say that like it's permanent." She exhaled sharply, wrapping her arms around herself. "It is." A silence settled between them, heavy yet not entirely uncomfortable. Liam finally pushed off the doorway and stepped into the room. "This shop belonged to my grandfather," he said, running a hand along the edge of a wooden workbench. "He built violins, restored old instruments, said every broken thing deserved a second chance." Anna watched as he picked up a violin from the counter, his fingers tracing its polished curves. The way he handled it was almost reverent, like he understood the soul hidden within the wood. "You restore them?" she asked, her voice softer now. Liam nodded. "It's what I do. People bring in instruments that have been forgotten, abandoned in attics, or locked away in storage. I fix them, give them back their voices." He paused, then glanced at her. "Not so different from people, I suppose." His words settled uncomfortably in Anna's chest. She turned away, pretending to study a row of violin cases, though her mind was elsewhere. "Why did you stop playing?" Liam's question was gentle but direct. Anna tensed. She wasn't sure if it was the intimacy of the dimly lit shop or the storm trapping them together, but there was something about Liam that made her feel exposed. "I just did," she said flatly. Liam didn't push further, but something in his gaze told her he wasn't convinced. Instead, he placed the violin back on the counter and gestured toward the shop. "Come on, let me show you something." Anna hesitated before following him through the narrow aisles of the shop. The floorboards creaked beneath their steps as they moved past shelves stacked with forgotten treasures, old metronomes, worn-out music books, broken strings coiled in tiny glass jars. It felt like walking through a museum of lost sounds. Finally, Liam stopped in front of a wooden chest near the back of the room. He knelt, lifting the lid with care. Inside, nestled among layers of cloth, was an old music box. He wound the small key on its side, and after a few hesitant clicks, a melody drifted into the air. Soft, delicate, haunting. Anna felt something tighten in her throat. She knew this song. "This belonged to a composer," Liam said. "A woman who used to write music in this shop years ago. My grandfather said she would sit at the piano for hours, working on something she never finished." Anna's heart pounded. A composer, a woman, a melody left unfinished. Who was she? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Liam hesitated. Her name was Evelyn Carter. The world tilted beneath Anna's feet. Carter, her mother. The shop blurred, her vision narrowing to the small, spinning ballerina inside the music box, twirling to a melody she had heard as a child, played by hands she had once trusted with her entire heart. Her mother had been here. Her unfinished music had been left behind in this shop. Anna's breath hitched as something long buried stirred within her. She had come into this shop seeking shelter from the storm. She hadn't expected to find the echoes of a past she thought she had lost forever. Chapter 5. Frostbitten Notes. Anna couldn't breathe. The name Evelyn Carter echoed in her mind, unraveling memories she had spent years trying to bury. The melody from the music box continued its haunting tune, delicate yet filled with something unfinished, something aching to be completed. She swallowed hard, staring at the tiny ballerina twirling inside the box. It was impossible. Her mother had never spoken about this place, never mentioned leaving behind a piece of herself in this forgotten shop. And yet, here it was, a fragment of the past, waiting in the dust for someone to find it. Liam was watching her carefully. He had noticed the way she froze, the way her breath had hitched the moment he had spoken the name. "You knew her," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Anna hesitated. Her first instinct was to deny it, to close the lid on the past, and pretend she had never heard that name before. But there was something about this shop, about the way it carried stories in its walls that made her feel she couldn't lie to it. "She was my mother," Anna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam's expression flickered with surprise, but he didn't speak right away. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the music box, as if seeing it in a different light now. "She used to come here a lot," he finally said. "At least, that's what my grandfather told me. She would sit at the piano for hours, writing music. But one day, she stopped coming. No one knew why." Anna's fingers curled into her coat sleeves. She knew why. Her mother had abandoned music just as she had. It had been gradual at first. The way Evelyn would stare at the piano for long moments without playing. The way she would hum unfinished melodies under her breath before shaking her head and falling silent. And then, one day, the music had simply stopped. Anna had never asked why. She had been too young to understand, too afraid to push. And now, standing in this shop filled with echoes of lost sounds, she wondered if she had been wrong to let it go. Liam closed the music box gently, the melody cutting off mid-note. "I guess that makes this yours then," he said. Anna shook her head. I don't know what to do with it." "You could finish it," Liam suggested. The words sent a sharp pang through her. She looked away, her gaze landing on the old piano in the corner. The dust on its keys glowed faintly under the shop's warm light, like frost catching the last rays of sun. "I don't play anymore," she said, the same words she had told him before. Liam studied her for a moment before sighing. "You know," he said, crossing his arms, "instruments don't stop working just because they're abandoned. They just wait." Anna glanced at him, surprised by the quiet intensity in his voice. "You think people are the same?" she asked. Liam hesitated. "Maybe," he admitted. "Maybe we're all just waiting for the right hands to bring us back to life." A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. The storm outside raged on, its howls muffled by the thick walls of the shop. Anna turned back to the piano. She could almost hear it, the soft hum of an unfinished melody, lingering just beneath the surface, waiting. And for the first time in years, she wondered what it would feel like to let the music back in. Chapter 6: A Letter Never Sent. The storm outside had not softened. The wind continued to howl as it pressed against the old windows of the music shop, its howls turning into whispers that seemed to seep into the very air. Anna sat by the piano, the weight of her fingers hovering above the keys, unsure whether to play or to let the moment slip away. The air was thick with silence, save for the soft creaking of the wooden floors beneath her feet and the occasional gust of wind shaking the panes. Liam was still in the back of the shop, tending to a violin that had clearly seen better days. The sound of his hands working, tightening a string, adjusting the bow, was oddly soothing, like a background hum to her thoughts. She could hear the whispering strings of the violin even though it was across the room, as though the instrument itself was reaching out, trying to pull her in. "Do you ever think about the sound of silence?" Liam's voice broke through her reverie. Anna glanced up to find him standing just behind her, the violin now in his hands, cradled carefully like something fragile. He was staring at her with an unreadable expression, the light from the fireplace casting soft shadows across his face. She shook her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Liam's gaze dropped to the violin in his hands, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was the soft scrape of his fingers along the strings. Instruments don't just make music. They carry memories too. They hold the echoes of every note, every practice, every performance. But there's a space between the notes, something that feels like silence, but it's really just the absence of sound. That's where the music lives. Anna didn't answer right away. The idea lingered in her mind, unfurling like a delicate thread, as if she was seeing the world in a new light. "That's an interesting way to look at it," she said softly. Liam smiled faintly, his attention returning to the violin. "I think music, like people, isn't just what's played. It's everything that's not." The words seemed to float between them, their meaning settling into the quiet. Anna looked at the violin, its polished wood gleaming in the firelight, and then to the piano in front of her. There was something about the way Liam spoke, like he was speaking not just about music, but about something deeper, something far more fragile. Her fingers itched to touch the piano keys again. She was so close to the edge, so close to opening up a door she had kept locked for years. But the hesitation was still there, buried deep in her chest. The fear of what might happen if she let herself fall back into music, back into the memories it held. "You should play," Liam said, almost as though he could read her thoughts. She looked at him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. "I'm not sure I can." Liam's gaze softened, and he took a step closer, his movements deliberate, almost reverent. "There's no such thing as can't. Only waiting." Anna bit her lip, a rush of conflicting emotions filling her chest. She didn't know why she was so afraid, why she felt like she was standing on the edge of something monumental. Maybe it was the fear of failure, or the fear of remembering things she had tried to forget. But as she looked at Liam, standing there with his violin, the way his hands seemed to understand the delicate balance between sound and silence, she realized something. She had been waiting for the wrong thing. She had been waiting for permission. And here it was, standing before her, in the form of a man who understood that sometimes the most important things in life weren't the notes we played, but the spaces between them. She took a breath and placed her hands on the keys. At first, she hesitated, just for a moment, unsure. And then, slowly, the first note rang out into the room, soft and tentative. It was as if the piano itself had been waiting for her touch, the sound emerging from the silence like an old friend coming back home. The note lingered, hanging in the air, before Anna pressed a second, and then a third. The music started to build, timid at first, and then more confident as her fingers began to move, drawing out a melody that had been lost to her for so long. It wasn't perfect. The notes were slightly off, the rhythm uncertain, but it didn't matter. She was playing again, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was pretending. Liam stood quietly beside her, his eyes closed, letting the music fill the room. There was something peaceful about it, something that felt like healing. When the last note finally trailed off, Anna sat back, her hands resting lightly on the keys. She hadn't realized how much she had missed it, the way the music wrapped itself around her, how it calmed the storms inside her mind. Liam didn't speak at first, letting the silence settle in the room once again. But this time, it didn't feel heavy or oppressive. It felt full, complete. "You have a beautiful way with sound," Liam said quietly. Anna smiled faintly, though she felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. "I didn't think I still had it in me." Liam's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Sometimes, all we need is a little time, and the right kind of silence." The storm outside howled once more, but inside the shop, there was nothing but the warmth of the fire, the faint glow of the instruments, and the lingering sound of music that had begun to weave its way back into their lives. Chapter 7. The Song That Never Played. The world outside had grown still. The snowstorm that had raged all day had softened into a quiet, steady fall, blanketing the streets in a layer of untouched white. Anna stood by the window, staring out at the small world beyond the glass. The storm had passed, but the quiet left in its wake felt heavier than ever. Inside the shop, the flickering light from the fireplace bathed the room in a soft glow, casting long shadows that danced across the worn wooden floors. It was peaceful, but there was an unease in the air, like the calm before something that neither of them wanted to face. Liam sat near the fireplace, his fingers absently running along the strings of the violin he had repaired earlier, though the music had long stopped. The silence between them stretched longer now, unspoken words hanging in the space between them like the mistletoe above the door, an old holiday tradition, a reminder of the season, and yet it felt so out of place here, in this moment. Anna turned away from the window and walked over to where Liam sat, her footsteps slow, deliberate. There was something she had been holding back, something she couldn't let slip away like the music had. "Do you ever wonder what could have been?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Liam looked up at her, his brow furrowing slightly, as if he wasn't sure how to answer. His fingers paused over the violin strings, and he let the question settle between them for a moment before replying. "All the time," he said quietly, "but I don't think it does any good. Wondering about what's already passed. It's like trying to chase the shadows beneath the mistletoe." Anna blinked, her eyes narrowing slightly in thought. "The shadows beneath the mistletoe?" Liam smiled, though it was a small, wistful expression, as if the words had come from a place deeper than he intended. "It's a holiday tradition. You're supposed to stand under the mistletoe and kiss someone, but what happens if you miss it? What if you're standing there, but the moment slips away?" Anna considered his words, feeling a strange sensation in her chest. "You let it pass," she said slowly. "Exactly," Liam agreed, his voice softer now, his eyes focused on the violin in his lap. "You let it pass, and it's gone forever. But the shadows remain. They linger in the spaces we never filled." The silence between them felt different now, heavier, more intimate. It wasn't just the weather that had brought them together in this quiet shop. It was something more, something unspoken, hanging in the air like the mistletoe above the door. Anna took a step closer to him, her heart beating a little faster than it should have. She had been trying to avoid it, trying to keep her distance, but it was harder now. The music, the storm, and everything that had happened between them, it was all weaving together into something that felt impossible to ignore. "You don't have to let it go, you know," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. Liam's gaze lifted to meet hers, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. His eyes were steady, searching, but there was something else there, something she couldn't quite name. "Maybe I don't want to," he said softly. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had expected him to retreat, to close off the connection that had been growing between them, but he hadn't. He was standing at the edge with her, waiting for her to take the next step. She wasn't sure what that next step was, but she knew she didn't want to keep running away from it. Not anymore. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. The touch was light, hesitant, but it was enough to send a shiver down her spine. The moment stretched, pulling them both into its gravity, and Anna couldn't help but feel that everything had changed. Liam's hand closed over hers, warm and steady. His fingers intertwined with hers, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible squeeze. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. The storm outside had calmed, but the storm inside her was just beginning. And for the first time, she felt ready to face it. The shadows beneath the mistletoe might have been elusive, but the connection between them was undeniable. As the night stretched on, the soft glow of the fire flickering in the corner of the room, Anna and Liam sat in silence, their hands still entwined. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in a quiet peace. But inside, there was something new, something that had taken root, and for once, it didn't feel like something she needed to run from. Chapter 8. Shadows in the Snow. The days after the storm had passed were still and quiet. The snow had settled, creating a soft blanket over the streets, muffling the sounds of the world beyond. Inside the shop, the fire crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows that danced across the walls. Yet, despite the warmth and comfort of the room, there was a sense of something unfinished, something lingering between Anna and Liam, just beyond reach. Anna had been playing the piano more often, the keys becoming a refuge for her thoughts. She let the music flow through her, filling the silence with melodies that seemed to carry pieces of her past. But the more she played, the more she realized something she had been avoiding. The memories of her past had always been like distant echoes, muffled and faint. But with each note she played, they became clearer, more insistent. She could hear the laughter of a child, the soft murmur of a mother's voice, the crackling of the fireplace in the old house where she had grown up. It was as if the music was unlocking doors she had closed long ago. One evening, as she sat by the piano, Her fingers pausing over the keys, Liam appeared at the threshold of the room. He had been quiet lately, his presence steady but distant, as if he, too, was trying to understand what had shifted between them. "You've been quiet," he remarked softly, his voice breaking the silence that had settled between them. Anna looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm thinking," she said simply, though her words felt empty, like they didn't quite capture the depth of what she was feeling. Liam stepped closer, his eyes scanning the room before settling back on her. "What are you thinking about?" She hesitated, her fingers gently tracing the edge of the piano. "Christmas," she said, almost to herself, "and everything that came before." Liam nodded, his expression unreadable. A lot has happened since then. The words hung in the air, but Anna wasn't sure if they were meant for her or for him. She felt a sudden weight in her chest, as though the memories of Christmases past were rushing to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. She looked down at her hands, noticing how tightly they were gripping the edge of the piano. "You never talk about your past," Liam continued, his voice gentle but probing. Anna's breath caught in her throat, and she found herself unable to answer. She had buried those memories for so long, too long, and now, in the quiet of the shop, they were rising again, forcing her to confront what she had left behind. Her mind drifted to Christmases spent in a house filled with laughter and warmth, to the smell of pine and the crackle of the fire, to the voices of her parents singing carols as the tree sparkled with lights. But those memories weren't as perfect as they seemed. There had been tension, too, a constant undercurrent that she had never quite understood as a child. "I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it," Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam nodded, understanding the unspoken barrier that she had built around herself. "You don't have to, Anna. But you don't have to carry it alone, either." The words settled in her chest like a soft, steady weight. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the ghosts that had been haunting her for years. But the fear, the pain of what might resurface, kept her frozen. Liam's gaze softened, and he took a step closer, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of her thoughts. He reached out, gently brushing a lock of hair from her face, his touch light and hesitant. "Whenever you're ready," he said softly, his voice like a promise. Anna swallowed, the emotions swirling inside her threatening to spill over. She had been so caught up in the music, in the connection she was slowly building with Liam, that she hadn't allowed herself to fully face the past. But maybe now was the time. Maybe the ghosts of her forgotten Christmases could finally be laid to rest. She stood, her legs slightly unsteady, and walked toward the small, faded Christmas tree in the corner of the room. It was nothing like the grand trees of her childhood, but it had been a small comfort in the weeks leading up to the holidays. Its lights twinkled faintly, casting soft reflections on the ornaments that hung from its branches. For a moment, she stood there, just looking at it. Then, her fingers brushed against the old ornament that hung low on the tree, a small, delicate star made of gold and silver thread. It had once belonged to her mother, a gift passed down from her grandmother. Liam stepped up beside her, his eyes following her gaze to the ornament. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Anna nodded, her throat tight. "It was my mother's. She always said it would bring good luck." She paused, her fingers resting lightly on the star. "But sometimes I wonder if luck has anything to do with it," she added, her voice barely audible. "Sometimes it feels like the past is just a shadow, following me wherever I go." Liam didn't speak immediately. Instead, he reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. "The past doesn't define us, Anna," he said softly. "It's the present, the choices we make now, that shape who we are." She looked at him, her heart heavy with unspoken words. The past was a ghost, always lingering in the background, but it didn't have to haunt her forever. With a deep breath, Anna let go of the ornament and turned to face him. The weight in her chest hadn't disappeared, but it felt lighter, somehow. The ghosts of her forgotten Christmases were still there, but she didn't have to let them control her anymore. The fire crackled softly in the background, and outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt like she could breathe again. Chapter 9: Whispers of the Past. The days leading up to Christmas had a dreamlike quality, with the snow still falling gently, covering the world in a soft, glittering white blanket. Anna and Liam spent most of their time in the shop, with the warm fire crackling and the quiet hum of their conversations filling the air. Yet, despite the serenity, there was a tension that lingered between them, an unspoken awareness of what lay just beneath the surface. Anna had always believed that the snow held secrets. It was a strange thought, but something about the way it fell, soft and silent, made her feel like the world was hiding something that could only be uncovered if she looked closely enough. Perhaps it was the way the snow covered the past, hiding old tracks and memories. Or perhaps it was the promise of something new, something that could be uncovered once the world was bare and open. It was a thought she couldn't shake as she stared out the window one evening, watching the flakes drift slowly to the ground. She felt a familiar tug in her chest, the weight of the past pressing down on her as it always did this time of year. The Christmases that had once been filled with joy now felt like ghosts, shadows that lingered in the corners of her heart. Liam had been quiet recently, more so than usual. He spent long hours in the back of the shop, working on his violins, his fingers moving over the wood as if he were searching for something. It was as though he, too, was waiting for something that would break the silence, that would reveal the truth that had been hidden for so long. One evening, as Anna sat by the fire, she heard him approach. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his silhouette framed by the soft glow of the room. His eyes were distant, lost in thought, but there was something else in them, a hint of something he hadn't said, a secret he had been carrying. "Anna," he began, his voice quiet but steady, "there's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned toward him, her gaze locking with his. The words that hung in the air felt heavy, like a weight pressing down on her chest. She had known, deep down, that something was coming, something that would change everything. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam hesitated for a moment, his fingers running through his hair, his expression uncertain. "I didn't want to say anything before, but I think it's time." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She could feel her heart racing, the quiet of the room making the silence between them feel more pronounced. "There's something about the shop," Liam continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Something I've discovered, something that might explain why this place feels different." Anna's curiosity was piqued, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation would open doors she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Liam stepped closer, his eyes dark and intense. "I found something in the attic," he said, his voice barely audible. "A box. Inside it was a letter that belonged to someone who used to live here." Anna's pulse quickened, the weight of his words sinking in. "A letter," she repeated, her mind racing. "Yes," Liam replied, his gaze never leaving hers. "But it's more than just a letter. It's a letter to someone who was lost, someone who was never found. It's a letter that speaks of things I'm not sure I understand, but I think it has something to do with the history of this place, and with you." Anna stood up, her legs feeling shaky beneath her. The fire flickered in the background, casting long shadows on the walls, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze in place. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Why are you telling me this now?" Liam took a step closer, his expression softening. "Because I think it's time for you to know. I think it's time for us to know the truth." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Anna's heart was pounding in her chest, and she could feel the weight of the past pressing down on her, threatening to pull her under. "What does it say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, weathered envelope. He handed it to her, his fingers brushing against hers as she took it. The envelope was old, the edges frayed with time, but the handwriting on it was clear, neat, precise, and familiar. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she saw the name on the envelope. It was her mother's name, written in a script she had seen countless times before. "Open it," Liam urged softly. Her hands trembled as she carefully peeled open the envelope, pulling out the letter inside. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded in places, but the words were still legible. She began to read aloud, her voice shaking with each word. "My dearest daughter, I hope this letter finds its way to you. I hope that, by the time you read this, you will understand why I had to leave. There are things I could never explain, things I could never tell you. But you must know this, above all else, my love for you was never in question. The secrets of this house run deeper than you know, and you are a part of them. The key to everything lies beneath the snow. Beneath the snow, there is a truth that has been buried for far too long. A truth that will change everything. Do not be afraid. It is time for you to uncover it." Anna's voice faltered as she finished reading, the letter slipping from her fingers and falling to the floor. The room seemed to spin around her as the weight of her mother's words settled in. "Beneath the snow," she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Liam watched her closely, his expression unreadable. "What does it mean, Anna?" She shook her head, unable to find the words. The letter, the message, it all felt too much, too overwhelming. But one thing was clear. The secret beneath the snow was waiting to be uncovered, and Anna couldn't avoid it any longer. Chapter 10: The Frozen Waltz. The days following the discovery of the letter were a blur of restless nights and anxious thoughts. Anna couldn't stop replaying the words in her mind, each one heavier than the last. The truth lies beneath the snow. It had been so simple, yet so deeply unsettling. She had to know what it meant. She had to understand. But where to begin? The snow continued to fall, coating the world outside in a never-ending layer of white. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, waiting for Anna to take the next step. Every corner of the shop felt like it was closing in on her, every shadow seeming to whisper secrets she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. Liam, too, seemed to feel the weight of the moment. He had been quieter than usual, his eyes often distant as he worked on the violins. But there was a sense of urgency in his silence, an unspoken understanding that something important was about to unfold. One evening, as the fire crackled softly in the background, Liam approached Anna with a look of determination in his eyes. He held a small, worn key in his hand, the metal tarnished by time, but unmistakably familiar. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she recognized it. It was the key to the attic, the same attic where Liam had discovered the letter, the place that had held so many secrets for so long. "I think it's time we go up there," Liam said quietly, his voice low but firm. Anna stared at the key in his hand, feeling the weight of it press against her chest. This was the moment she had been dreading, and yet, she knew it was inevitable. The truth, whatever it was, had to be uncovered. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we find something we can't understand? What if it changes everything?" Liam stepped closer, his presence reassuring yet filled with the gravity of the situation. "I know it's frightening, Anna, but we can't keep running from it. The past has a way of coming back, whether we want it to or not. And this shop, these walls, they've been waiting for us to find the answers." Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She looked out the window, where the snow continued to fall, the world outside as quiet and still as her heart felt in that moment. It was as if everything was leading up to this very point, the path to the past, the key to unlocking the truth. "All right," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "Let's do it." Together, they made their way to the staircase leading to the attic. The narrow, creaking stairs seemed to groan under their weight. each step echoing in the silence. Anna's pulse quickened with every step, the anticipation building with each movement. The attic door loomed ahead, closed and uninviting, as if it, too, had been waiting for this moment. Liam inserted the key into the lock, turning it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing the dusty, forgotten space beyond. The air inside was thick with the scent of old wood and aged paper, and Anna could feel the weight of the years pressing down on her as she stepped over the threshold. The attic was filled with relics from the past, old trunks, forgotten furniture, and shelves lined with boxes that had not been touched in years. The only sound was the soft creak of the wooden floorboards beneath their feet, the faint whispers of memories long past. Liam led the way, his eyes scanning the room as if he were looking for something specific. His fingers brushed over the old objects, his movements deliberate, as though he were searching for the key to unlocking the mysteries hidden here. Anna's gaze fell upon an old trunk in the corner, its leather straps worn and faded with time. It seemed out of place among the other items, as though it had been left there deliberately, waiting to be discovered. She felt a sudden pull toward it, a sense of urgency she couldn't explain. "Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think this is it." He turned to her, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. He moved toward the trunk, kneeling beside it as he examined the lock. The trunk was old, but it didn't seem to be too difficult to open. He took a small knife from his pocket and carefully pried the lock open, the metal scraping against the wood with a sound that sent a chill down Anna's spine. When the trunk opened, it revealed a collection of old papers, photographs, and more letters, their edges frayed with age. But it wasn't just the letters that caught Anna's attention. There, nestled among the papers, was an old photograph, faded and worn, but unmistakable. It was a picture of Anna's mother, younger than she had ever seen her, standing beside a man Anna didn't recognize. The man's eyes were hauntingly familiar, but Anna couldn't place him. She felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if she had seen him before in a dream or in a memory that didn't belong to her. Liam, sensing her confusion, picked up the photograph and studied it carefully. "I think this is the man the letter spoke about," he said, his voice gentle. "The one your mother loved before she left." Anna's heart raced as she stared at the photograph. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but the image was still incomplete. Who was this man? And why had her mother kept him a secret? Liam turned to her, his expression serious. "There's more to this story, Anna. I can feel it. This photograph, the letters, it's all connected. And I think it's time you knew the truth about your mother." Anna felt a surge of emotions, fear, sadness, curiosity, all swirling inside her. The path to the past had finally opened, but the answers it held were more complicated than she had ever imagined. The truth was closer than ever, and yet, it seemed more elusive than ever before. Chapter 11. A Key to the Unknown. The photograph of Anna's mother had haunted her every waking moment. Its worn edges seemed to burn into her mind. The image of a man whose face felt like a distant echo, a figure she had never known, but whose presence felt far too familiar. The trunk in the attic had revealed more questions than answers, and the weight of it all hung heavily in the air between her and Liam. It was late evening when Anna finally decided to take the photograph and the letters downstairs, away from the dim, cluttered attic. She felt as though they were becoming too much of a burden to carry in that old, forgotten room. Liam had offered to stay upstairs, to look through the rest of the trunk, but Anna needed space to think. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man in the photograph, someone she was sure she had never met, held the key to unraveling her mother's past. Why had she kept him a secret? And why had she never told Anna about the truth behind her father's departure? Liam had said, "It's time you knew the truth about your mother," but Anna wasn't sure if she was ready to hear it. The fire crackled softly in the shop's hearth, the only sound in the otherwise silent room. Anna sat by the warmth of the fire, the photograph in her hands, carefully studying the faces frozen in time. Her mother's eyes were filled with a wistful sadness, the kind Anna had often glimpsed in the moments when her mother would look out of the window, lost in thoughts she would never share. And the man beside her. There was a tenderness in the way he looked at her, as if they shared a secret no one else would ever understand. Anna's pulse quickened, her chest tightening with emotions she couldn't name. "What did you want me to know, Mom?" she whispered to the air, her voice barely audible over the crackling of the fire. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her fingers traced the edges of the photograph, as though she could feel the history between them seeping through the paper. She wondered if this man was the reason her mother had left music behind. She had never spoken much of her past, only vague mentions of a life before Anna, a life that seemed to have faded in the wake of raising her daughter. But there was more, something Anna could sense in the silence that had always hung between them. The letters from the trunk were neatly folded, tied with a piece of string that had long since frayed. Anna hadn't dared open them yet, afraid of what they might reveal. She had always felt that her mother's life before her was a mystery too large to confront. But now, with the photograph staring back at her, she knew she couldn't avoid the truth any longer. Taking a deep breath, Anna untied the string and unfolded the first letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, flowing, the kind of handwriting that spoke of love, longing, and regret. Her mother's handwriting. "My dearest Thomas, it has been weeks since we last spoke, and every day feels like an eternity. You have left a hole in my heart that I fear will never be filled. I know I have to let you go, but the thought of never seeing you again breaks something inside of me. You are my soul's song, and yet I must silence it for the sake of the life we have built. You were right to leave, I know that, but I cannot help but wonder if we are making a mistake. If I could hold on to the dream of us, I would, but it is slipping away like the snow that melts in the morning light. I will always love you, no matter the distance, no matter the years that pass. But I am afraid, Thomas, that I must move forward without you. I can't keep waiting for something that will never return. Yours always, Eleanor." Anna felt her breath catch in her throat as she finished reading. Thomas, the name from the photograph. Her mother had known him, loved him, but she had let him go. The letter was full of love, but it was also full of sorrow, of resignation. She wanted to read more, to understand why her mother had chosen to leave that life behind, but her hands trembled as she folded the letter back up. The weight of it all was too much. "I don't know if I can do this," Anna whispered, her voice hoarse as she ran a hand through her hair. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and she closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the flames soothe her. Liam had been quiet all day, but he had returned downstairs only an hour ago. He had been working on a violin in the corner, his brow furrowed in concentration, his hands skillfully shaping the wood. It was the way he always worked, quiet, focused, as if the rest of the world had faded away. But now, as Anna looked up, she saw him watching her with concern. "Anna, you're still holding on to that photograph," Liam said softly, his voice breaking the silence. "Do you want to talk about it?" She glanced at him, and for a moment, her eyes welled up with tears. She hadn't meant for him to see her so vulnerable, but the weight of everything had become too much to carry alone. "I don't know what to think, Liam," she confessed. "I don't know who Thomas is. Why did my mom never tell me about him? And why did she leave everything behind?" Liam set the violin down, crossing the room to sit beside her. He was close now, close enough for Anna to feel the warmth of his presence. His eyes, filled with understanding, met hers. "The truth isn't always easy to face," he said quietly, "but it's the only way forward. Whatever your mother's reasons were, Anna, you deserve to know the whole story." She nodded, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. "I don't want to lose the person I thought she was," she whispered. "I don't want to shatter the image I've always had of her." Liam reached out, gently wiping away the tear. "It won't shatter, Anna. The love she had for you, that's real. But sometimes, to move forward, We have to confront the past, even the parts we've been hiding from." Anna didn't reply immediately. Instead, she sat in silence, her eyes on the flickering flames as they seemed to dance with her thoughts. The past was a shadow that loomed larger with each passing day. And now, she knew that the only way to find peace, to truly move forward, was to face it head-on. Chapter 12. Harmonies of the Heart. The morning after reading her mother's letter was clouded in uncertainty. Anna had barely slept, the weight of the words on the page gnawing at her through the night. Each line she read seemed to echo in her mind like the fading notes of a song, haunting and unyielding. She could still feel the heat of the fire on her skin, still hear the trembling in her voice as she spoke to Liam. The uncertainty she had carried for so long about her mother's past had only deepened, and now she stood at the edge of a precipice, unsure if she could, or should, take the next step. Liam, for all his understanding, had remained quiet that night. He had offered no immediate solutions, no comforting words that might smooth over the sharp edges of Anna's confusion. Instead, he had simply been there, silently supporting her as she grappled with the unraveling threads of her mother's life. Now, as the shop's window revealed the gray morning sky, Anna sat in the quiet space where only the sounds of a distant wind and the occasional clink of metal from Liam's workbench filled the air. Her mind was preoccupied with one thought: Thomas. Who was he really? Was he the one who had played such a pivotal role in her mother's life? Or was he just a ghost from a past that Anna had no place in? Liam entered the room, his presence a quiet comfort. He seemed to sense her unrest as he looked over at her, his gaze soft, but with an intensity that made Anna feel like he could see every one of her hidden thoughts. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" Liam asked, his voice low but firm. Anna nodded, her fingers resting on the photograph that lay before her on the table, the image of her mother and Thomas frozen in time. She hadn't moved it since the night before, not wanting to let go of the connection it seemed to offer. "I can't stop thinking about him," Anna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mother wrote him letters, but she never told me about him. She kept him hidden from me." "What?" Liam took a step closer, his eyes meeting hers. "You'll have to ask her. But I think, in time, you'll understand why she kept him secret. Sometimes, the people we love have stories that we don't always want to share." Anna shifted in her seat, turning the photograph over, almost as though the back of it would hold a clue she had missed. "But what if the secret changes everything I thought I knew about her?" she asked, her voice faltering. Liam stood still for a moment, considering her words. Then, he sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. He didn't say anything at first, just let the silence hang between them as they both seemed to settle into their own thoughts. He wasn't pressing her to answer, wasn't pushing her to move forward with the investigation into her mother's past. Instead, he was simply there, patient, understanding. "I don't think it will change the love you have for her," he finally said. "If anything, it will help you understand her more fully. People are complicated, Anna. We don't always fit into the neat little boxes we create for ourselves. Maybe your mother was trying to protect you from something painful she didn't want to relive. But I still don't understand why she kept it from me," Anna said, her voice soft but tinged with frustration. "Why didn't she tell me? Why couldn't she trust me with her past?" Liam's eyes softened as he regarded her. "I think maybe she didn't trust herself," he said quietly. "Maybe she was afraid of what the truth might mean for you, for your relationship. She might have thought that if you knew, it would change everything." Anna sighed, looking out the window at the bare branches of the trees that lined the street. Winter had settled in, the world outside wrapped in a gray, frosty veil. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking just beneath the surface, something she wasn't seeing yet. The door to the shop creaked open, and they both looked up. A gust of cold air swept into the room, and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the brightness of the snowy day outside. Anna's heart skipped a beat, when she recognized the man who had entered. Thomas. He was older now, his face weathered with time, but his eyes, those same eyes she had seen in her mother's photograph, stayed with her. They were the same, full of secrets and quiet sorrow. Liam stood quickly, his hands steady at his sides, as Thomas made his way into the shop. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. "Anna," Thomas said, his voice rough and deep, as if it had been years since he last spoke. I need to talk to you." Anna's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she felt paralyzed, her mind swirling with 1,000 questions. How had he found her? Why was he here after all this time? "What do you want?" Anna managed to ask, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. Thomas glanced over at Liam, who had remained standing near the workbench, watching the exchange with quiet intensity. "I need to explain myself," Thomas said, "but I can't do it without your help. There's something I've been keeping from you, something you need to know." Anna's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her chest, like the thick snow that had been falling outside. This was it, the moment she had been dreading, the moment she had to confront the truth about her mother's past, and possibly about her own. Liam stepped back slightly, allowing them both space, but his presence lingered. He wasn't going anywhere. Anna could sense his support, steady and unwavering, even as the mystery of her mother's life seemed to deepen with every word. "What is it?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas took a deep breath, his eyes locking with hers. "The letters, they weren't just from your mother. They were from me too, and I need you to understand why I left." Anna's world tilted, and she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Chapter 13, Between the Lines of a Song. The silence that fell over the room was heavy, laden with anticipation. Anna could hear her heart beating in her chest, loud and urgent, as if it, too, was waiting for the truth to be revealed. The words Thomas had just spoken seemed to hang in the air like a fragile thread ready to snap. She took a step back, trying to steady her breath, but the shock of his confession still echoed in her mind. The letters weren't just from her mother, they were from him too. She turned her gaze toward Liam, his face unreadable but his eyes soft, watching her with concern. He didn't speak, but Anna could sense his support, his quiet presence like a steadying hand on her shoulder. He had always been there, even in the moments when she didn't know how to face the truth about her mother, her past, or her own heart. But now the storm outside seemed to mirror the one raging inside her. Questions flooded her mind, too many to process, each one more confusing than the last. Why hadn't Thomas told her this before? Why had he left? And most importantly, what did this revelation mean for the life she had known? She took a deep breath and looked back at Thomas, her voice shaky but determined. "Why are you here now? After all this time? Why didn't you tell me before?" Thomas hesitated, his expression strained. "I was a coward," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I left because I didn't think I could give your mother what she needed. I didn't think I could be the man she deserved." He paused, his eyes dropping to the floor as if the weight of his own words was too much to bear. "And I didn't want you to hate me. I thought it would be better for you to never know the truth." Anna felt a pang in her chest, a mix of anger and sadness, but there was something else too, a flicker of understanding. She could hear the vulnerability in his voice, the self-doubt that had held him back all these years. It was the same self-doubt that had plagued her mother, the same uncertainty that had kept her from sharing the full story. "You think I would have hated you?" Anna's voice was low, almost a whisper. "After everything? After what you did to her? To us?" Thomas looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly, "but I know I did. And I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air between them, but it wasn't enough to erase the years of pain, the years of unanswered questions. Anna wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but something in Thomas's face stopped her. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the regret that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. "I need to understand," she said, her voice steadying with resolve. "What happened? Why did you leave? Why did you disappear from our lives?" Thomas sighed deeply, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's not simple," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I loved your mother, but she was carrying a secret, one that I couldn't live with. And I was afraid. I was afraid of what it would do to us, to you. So I left. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it would protect you both." Anna shook her head, feeling the confusion rise within her again. "What secret?" she demanded. "What could be so terrible that you would leave us?" Thomas's gaze dropped to the photograph on the table, the one that had been there since Anna first uncovered the letters. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression distant. "Your mother, she wasn't just running from the past," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "She was hiding something from it, something that had to do with the music." "The music?" Anna repeated, her mind reeling. She glanced at Liam, who stood silently at the workbench, watching the conversation unfold. His expression was hard to read, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, as if he knew something she didn't. "Yes," Thomas said, his voice quieter now. "Your mother was part of something dangerous. A group of musicians who were involved in things they shouldn't have been. They were using music, not just for art, but for power. And your mother, she got caught up in it." Anna's heart skipped a beat. "You're saying she was involved in something illegal? That she was part of some kind of conspiracy?" Thomas nodded, but there was an unease in his eyes. "It wasn't just that. There was magic in the music, Anna. A power beyond anything we could understand. It wasn't just about playing instruments. It was about controlling emotions, controlling people. Your mother didn't want that power, but it had already taken hold of her. And when she realized what was happening, she tried to escape. That's why she left everything behind and started a new life. She wanted to protect you. But the truth was, she couldn't escape it completely. She was still tied to that world, and that's why I had to leave. I couldn't let that darkness follow her, and I couldn't let it touch you." Anna's mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what Thomas was saying. "You're saying my mother was part of some kind of secret society that used music for power?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. "How is that even possible?" Thomas met her gaze, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I know it sounds unbelievable," he said softly, "but it's the truth. And your mother, she didn't want to drag you into it. She kept it from you, Anna, because she loved you. She didn't want you to ever have to face it." The words echoed in Anna's mind, but they didn't make any sense. Music as power? Magic? She had heard stories, myths even, about ancient powers tied to music, but she never thought they could be real. It felt like a dream, a strange and unsettling dream, one that she couldn't quite wake from. Liam moved then, his quiet presence steadying Anna as he walked over to the table, his fingers brushing the edges of the photograph. "Is that why she never wanted you to play the piano?" Liam asked gently, his voice breaking into the tense atmosphere like a calm breeze. Thomas didn't answer immediately, but when he did, his voice was filled with a quiet sadness. "Yes," he said, "because she knew what it could do. She knew that once you started, there would be no turning back." Anna turned to Liam, her mind racing. What did this mean for her? What did it mean for the music she loved? The music she couldn't stop playing, even now, even in the silence of the abandoned shop. The questions swirled in her head, unanswered, like the snow that continued to fall outside, blanketing everything in a cold, impenetrable layer of white. Chapter 14, The Winter's Lullaby. The wind howled against the windows, its icy breath pressing against the glass like 1,000 unseen hands. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the small, dimly lit shop, the atmosphere had shifted, heavy with the weight of secrets that could no longer remain buried. Anna's heart raced, still echoing with the words Thomas had spoken. The revelations about her mother, the music, the power. It was too much to process all at once. Liam stood beside her, his presence a steadying force, yet even he seemed lost in thought, grappling with the gravity of what had just been uncovered. The quiet between them felt oppressive, filled with the unsaid, as if the storm outside could somehow sweep away the confusion that had gripped Anna's mind. Anna turned her gaze back to Thomas, who remained seated, his posture hunched with regret. His confession had left a deep, lingering ache in her chest. She had known that her mother had lived a life before her, a life filled with mystery. But this was something beyond anything she could have imagined. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" Anna's voice was a mixture of disbelief and a growing sense of unease. "That my mother was part of some cult that used music for power? It sounds like a fairy tale, Thomas." Thomas lifted his head, meeting her gaze with eyes that were filled with sorrow. "I understand how it sounds," he said softly. "But it's the truth. I wish it weren't, but it is." He paused, his voice breaking as he continued. "Your mother was stronger than she ever gave herself credit for. She didn't want to be part of that world. But when she found out what it could do, what it had done to people, she made a choice. She chose you. She chose to protect you." Anna swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking deeper into her heart. She had always seen her mother as a woman of strength, someone who could overcome anything. But this was beyond anything Anna had ever imagined. The music, the power, the danger, it all seemed like a dream, a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Liam moved then, his steps quiet but sure as he approached Thomas. "If what you're saying is true," Liam said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room, "then why didn't she come to us? Why didn't she trust Anna with the truth? Why hide it for so long?" Thomas met Liam's gaze, and for the first time, Anna saw something akin to shame flicker in his eyes. "Because she was afraid," Thomas admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid that the past would catch up with her, that the same darkness she had tried to escape would find its way into your life. She didn't want you to be burdened with it, Anna. She thought she was protecting you by keeping you in the dark. But I'm not in the dark anymore," Anna said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You've told me everything. The truth is out there now, and I have to deal with it. All of it." Thomas nodded slowly, his face etched with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you, Anna. I only wanted to protect you, to keep you safe from the shadows of the past. But the past has a way of catching up with us, no matter how hard we try to outrun it." Anna turned toward Liam, her heart a mix of emotions she couldn't name. She wanted to ask him what he thought about all of this, what he made of the story Thomas had shared, but she didn't need to. His presence beside her spoke volumes. He didn't need to say a word to understand the chaos she felt inside. He simply took her hand, his touch grounding her in a way that nothing else could. The storm outside had intensified, the wind howling like a living thing, but inside the shop, Anna felt a strange stillness. The air was thick with uncertainty, but also with something else, something she couldn't quite name. It was as if the storm had brought them all to this moment, to this place where the past and present collided. And now, she had to decide what to do with the truth. "I can't just forget this," Anna said, her voice quiet but firm. "I can't go back to the way things were, pretending like none of this matters. It matters. It matters to me." Liam squeezed her hand, his silent support unwavering. "We'll figure this out together," he said, his voice soft but resolute. Thomas, who had been watching the exchange between them, nodded slowly. "I know it's a lot to take in, Anna, but you don't have to face this alone. If you want to understand the full picture, if you want to know everything, I can help you, but it won't be easy. The past doesn't let go so easily." Anna's gaze flickered toward the window, where the storm raged outside, its fury unabated. But in that moment, she felt something shift within her, a sense of determination that had been missing before. She had always been afraid of the unknown, of the things that lay hidden in the shadows. But now, with Liam by her side and the truth beginning to unravel before her, she knew that she couldn't back down. She had to face the past. She had to confront whatever lay ahead, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. Her mother's secret was her legacy now, and it was time to uncover everything. "I'm ready," Anna said, her voice steady, her resolve clear. "I want to know the truth. All of it." Thomas looked at her, his expression one of quiet respect. "Then we'll start with what happened before she left," he said. "Before she met your father. It was when she was still trying to escape from them." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise and danger. Anna didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she couldn't stop now. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside her. The storm of emotions, questions, and the unyielding desire to uncover the truth. Liam stepped closer to her, his presence anchoring her in the moment. "We'll face it together," he said again, his words a promise. And with that, they stepped into the unknown, the storm still howling around them, but their hearts steadfast in their resolve to face whatever came next. Chapter 15, A Duet of Souls. The journey ahead felt like a riddle that couldn't be solved with logic alone. Each new piece of the story Thomas had shared seemed to open 1,000 more questions in Anna's mind. The weight of the past clung to her like a thick fog, and with each step she took toward understanding, the fog grew thicker. But there was no turning back. Not now. Anna sat at the edge of the old wooden table, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of a forgotten music box she had found earlier. The soft hum of the storm outside was like a distant lullaby, trying to lull them all into a sense of normalcy. But the tension inside the room was palpable. Thomas had left them to their thoughts, retreating to the back of the shop, his words still hanging in the air like an unfinished melody. Liam was beside her, his quiet presence a comfort, but even he couldn't fully silence the barrage of emotions swirling in her mind. Every part of the story, every fragment of the truth she was uncovering, made her feel as if she was caught between two worlds. One she had known her entire life, and the other, a shadowy past she had never even dreamed of. "What are we really dealing with, Liam?" Anna's voice broke the silence. Her words felt foreign, as though they belonged to someone else. This wasn't the Anna she had been just days ago. This was a woman on the edge of something much larger than herself. Liam turned to her, his brow furrowing as he considered her question. "I don't know," he admitted quietly, the weight of his words making Anna's heart ache. "But I do know that whatever it is, we'll face it together. Whatever happened, whatever your mother went through, it's not your fault." The sincerity in his voice brought a small sense of relief. Anna knew Liam meant it, and that meant everything to her. But still, the question loomed large. Why had her mother never spoken of any of this? Why had she hidden so much from her? "Do you think she was scared?" Anna whispered, as much to herself as to Liam. "Scared of what this power could do? Or scared of something worse?" Liam's gaze softened, and he took her hand in his. "I think she was trying to protect you from the darkness that consumed her life before you were born. But what she didn't realize was that the darkness wasn't something she could hide forever." Anna nodded, her thoughts trailing back to the music box. It was an unassuming thing, but it held a quiet promise of answers she hadn't yet begun to understand. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the delicate carvings on the wood, her fingers brushing against the small, intricate details her mother must have cherished. "I need to know everything," Anna said, a quiet resolve settling within her. "Everything she left behind, everything she never told me." Liam met her eyes, and for a brief moment, the storm outside seemed to fade away, replaced by a stillness that felt like the calm before an inevitable truth. "We'll find it," Liam said. His voice was steady, unwavering. "We'll find the answers, and you won't be alone in this." Before Anna could respond, she heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching. It was Thomas, his presence unmistakable even in the silence. He came back into the room, his eyes shadowed with something Anna couldn't quite place. He glanced at them both for a moment, as if measuring the air between them, before speaking. "There's more to it," Thomas said softly, his voice low, as though he were about to divulge something too dangerous to say aloud. He paused, glancing back toward the back of the shop where a dim light flickered in the distance. Your mother didn't just leave behind objects and memories, Anna. She left behind a legacy. And that legacy, it's tied to something far older than either of us realize. Anna felt a chill run down her spine, her heart racing as Thomas's words hit her. What was he saying? What did he mean by legacy? Thomas took a deep breath, seemingly gathering his thoughts before continuing. There's a reason why the music box is so important. It's not just a token, a keepsake. It's a key to unlocking something she had hoped to leave behind, something that could never be fully severed from her past. Anna stood up, her breath catching in her throat. What are you saying? What could she have left behind that's still connected to all of this? Your mother, Thomas began slowly, was part of a group that believed in using music as a conduit for things beyond our comprehension. It wasn't just about creating beautiful sounds. It was about power, control, and influence. And your mother was one of the most talented within that group. Anna's eyes widened as the weight of his words began to sink in. She couldn't quite comprehend the full scope of what Thomas was saying. A group? Power through music? It all sounded like madness, like something from a different world, a world that had no place in her reality. You're saying she was part of some cult? Anna's voice trembled slightly as the words finally escaped her lips. Thomas nodded. Yes, but it wasn't just about worship or ritual. The music they used was powerful. It had the ability to heal, to manipulate, to destroy. And your mother, she wanted nothing to do with that. She turned away from it, but she could never escape it entirely. The music, the power, it's always been a part of her. And it's always been a part of you. Anna felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. The music, the melodies she had always loved, the very thing she had been drawn to her whole life, had a darker side. A side she had never known. The idea of being tied to something so sinister sent a shiver through her, and for the first time, she wondered if she had ever truly known who her mother was. The music is more than just notes and rhythms, Thomas continued. It's a force that can be controlled, but it can also control you if you're not careful. Anna sat back down, her mind whirling as she tried to make sense of the storm that was now brewing inside her. There was so much she didn't know, so much about her mother, about the music, about the legacy she had been born into. Liam sat down beside her, his presence like a tether to reality. He didn't say anything, but his hand found hers once again, steadying her, grounding her. I don't know if I can handle this, Anna whispered, her voice cracking with the weight of it all. Liam squeezed her hand, offering her a quiet smile. You don't have to do it alone, Anna. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Anna took a deep breath, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the past was now an inescapable part of her future. She had no choice but to move forward, to uncover the rest of the truth and figure out what to do with it. The storm outside might have been fierce, but the storm inside her was even more so. And now, there was no turning back. Chapter 16, Unfinished Symphony. The quiet hum of the storm outside had turned into a roar, the wind slapping against the windows of the old shop with the fury of a beast trapped in a cage. The snow fell in thick blankets, covering the world in a thick layer of white. Anna sat by the fireplace, her mind a whirl of thoughts too numerous to count. Each question she had asked herself seemed to spark a dozen more. But now, with Thomas's cryptic words lingering in the air, she felt as though the pieces of her life were no longer hers to control. They were a puzzle that had been scattered across time and space, and she was no longer certain how to fit them together. The music box lay beside her, untouched. It had become more than just an object. It was a symbol of everything she hadn't known, a bridge to a past she had never asked to uncover. It was as though it was calling to her, waiting for her to make sense of it all. She glanced up at Liam, who had been pacing by the door for the past several minutes, his brow furrowed with deep concentration. He had been quiet for most of the evening, and though Anna knew he was trying to absorb everything as well, she could sense that something in him had shifted. He was no longer the man she had met a few days ago. The weight of their shared discovery had changed him, just as it had changed her. She caught his eye, and he stopped pacing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick, heavy, but there was something undeniably comforting in it. It was as if they were both waiting for the same thing to happen. Liam finally broke the silence. "I think we need to go further into this," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We need to understand what this group really was, what they wanted, and why your mother tried to cut ties with them." His words were calm, measured, but Anna could feel the undercurrent of unease beneath them. She nodded slowly, her gaze falling back to the music box. It had been a part of her life for as long as she could remember, and yet now, in this moment, it felt as though it was a barrier between her and everything she had known. A piece of the past that could either save or destroy everything. But how? Anna asked softly, her voice breaking the silence that had enveloped them. Where do we even begin? What do we look for? Her mind raced with the possibilities, each one darker than the last. Liam took a few steps closer to her, his hand gently brushing against hers. "We start with what we know," he said, his tone gentle yet firm. "We go back to the beginning, to your mother's music. We need to find out what she left behind, what she never told you." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "And we need to figure out what that group wanted from her, what they thought they could gain from her talent." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. The idea of unraveling her mother's life, her true life, was terrifying, but it was the only path forward. She had to know. She couldn't keep living in the shadow of a woman she barely understood. "What if I don't want to know?" she asked, the question slipping from her lips before she could stop it. Her voice wavered, betraying the fear she felt deep within. "What if some things are better left hidden?" Liam's eyes softened, his expression filled with understanding. He knelt beside her, his hand still resting gently on hers. "You're scared. I get it. But hiding from the truth won't change it. It's there, Anna. It's been there your entire life. And you deserve to know what it is. You deserve to understand who your mother really was, and why she never spoke about it." Anna swallowed, her throat tight. It was true. She had been hiding from the truth for so long, afraid of what it might reveal about the woman she had always admired. But now, as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, she knew that facing the truth was the only way forward. There was no turning back. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I just don't know if I'm ready for this. For everything that's coming." Liam smiled softly, squeezing her hand in reassurance. "You don't have to be ready," he said. "You just have to keep moving forward. And I'll be with you every step of the way." Anna nodded, the weight of his words settling in her chest like a comforting weight. She didn't have to do this alone. Liam was right. Whatever this was, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, they would uncover the answers they were both seeking. For the first time in days, Anna felt a small spark of hope flicker in her chest. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there. And in that moment, she realized something else. The storm outside, though fierce, would eventually pass. The winds would calm. The snow would stop falling. And when it did, she would have the answers she had been searching for. As the hours slipped by, Anna and Liam sat in the small room, the fire flickering softly in front of them. They spoke in hushed tones, planning their next move. Their journey had only just begun, but the path ahead was clearer now. Whatever lay in the shadows of her mother's past, they would uncover it. And whatever power it held, they would face it together. The music, the memories, the legacy, it was all waiting for them, just beyond the veil of the past. And they were ready to step into it. Chapter 17, The Hidden Composer. The world outside had quieted, but Anna's thoughts were as tumultuous as ever. The storm had slowed, but the shadows inside her mind only deepened with each passing hour. Her body ached from the intensity of the emotions she had fought to suppress, and yet she couldn't find it in herself to rest. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting warm flickers of light around the room. But Anna remained still, her gaze fixed on the dance of the flames. Liam sat across from her, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of his coffee mug. They hadn't spoken for what felt like hours. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words, questions, and fears that neither of them could voice. Anna could feel the weight of it pressing on her chest. Their unspoken connection was palpable, but something in the air had shifted. It wasn't just the storm that had changed, it was something between them. A tension she could no longer ignore. "Do you ever wonder," Anna began, her voice soft but shaky, "what it would have been like if we never found this place? If I never came here?" Liam's eyes lifted from the mug, his brow furrowing slightly as he studied her face. There was something in her expression that was different, something more fragile than before. "We can't undo the past, Anna," he said gently. "We can only move forward from here. But can we?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of doubt. What if we've uncovered something we weren't supposed to? What if we're not meant to know what we're finding? Liam shifted in his seat, his voice steady as he responded. "The truth is never as simple as we want it to be. Sometimes, things are buried for a reason, and sometimes we dig up things that are hard to understand. But that doesn't mean we should turn back now." Anna sighed deeply, pulling her knees up to her chest as she wrapped her arms around them. "I'm just so tired, Liam. So tired of feeling like I'm chasing something that might not even be real." The silence stretched between them again, but this time it was not uncomfortable. It was a shared silence, a moment of understanding that passed between them. Liam, who had spent so many years alone, understood that weariness better than anyone. He knew what it felt like to carry the weight of the past, to wonder whether the truth was worth uncovering. "You're right," Liam said after a long pause. "The truth is hard, and it's messy, but it's also ours to find. And if we want to understand everything, we have to keep going." Anna looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any trace of doubt. But there was none. His gaze was steady, unwavering, and it made something inside her stir. Perhaps it was the trust he had in her, or perhaps it was something deeper, something that she had yet to name. But in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't walk away from this. Not now. "But what if I'm not strong enough to handle it?" Anna whispered, her voice breaking. "What if everything I uncover only makes it worse?" Liam's expression softened, and he leaned forward, setting his coffee mug down. He reached out and gently cupped her hand in his, the warmth of his touch grounding her, pulling her back from the storm of her thoughts. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly, his words a promise. "And whatever we uncover, we'll face it together. We've already made it this far. I won't let you go through this alone." Anna closed her eyes, drawing a shaky breath as she allowed herself to lean into his touch. It was strange how simple gestures like this could make her feel so anchored. For so long, she had been floating, unsure of where she belonged. But with Liam beside her, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. "I'm scared, Liam," Anna admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what I'll find. I don't know if I can handle the truth. But I can't keep running from it either." Liam squeezed her hand gently, offering her the reassurance she so desperately needed. "We don't have to handle it all at once. One step at a time, Anna. We uncover one thing, and then we take the next step. Together." Anna nodded, a slow, reluctant acceptance settling over her. The fear didn't go away. It was still there, lurking in the back of her mind. But for the first time in a long while, she wasn't facing it alone. She had Liam by her side, and that made all the difference. The fire crackled again, its warmth filling the silence. Anna found herself lost in the flickering glow, her thoughts scattered like the embers dancing in the hearth. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't even know if she would ever have them. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the shadows of the past loomed large. But with Liam's hand in hers, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a glimmer of hope. And so, they sat together in the quiet, the storm outside now a mere whisper, as they prepared themselves for whatever would come next. Chapter 18. A Love Written in Music. The morning after the storm felt like an eternity. The world outside was quiet, the remnants of the snowstorm now just a soft blanket of white that stretched as far as the eye could see. Anna sat by the window, her gaze fixed on the stillness of the winter landscape, as though searching for something in the quiet expanse. Liam had left early that morning, after a brief and gentle exchange of words, to check on the shop. The words they'd shared before he left still echoed in Anna's mind. "We'll find the key today, Anna. I know it." She wasn't sure what he meant exactly, but the certainty in his voice had given her a strange sense of purpose. Perhaps it was time to face whatever lay hidden in the past, no longer shielded by the weight of time. She had spent the night going over everything, every detail that had surfaced in the days leading up to this moment. There were still so many questions, so many threads she couldn't yet weave together. But somewhere within the dust and shadows of forgotten notes, there had to be an answer. She had to believe it. As the light began to change, casting longer shadows across the room, Anna stood and moved toward the shelf that held the remnants of the past. Old music sheets, fragile photographs, and objects that seemed to hold a story of their own. She ran her fingers over the stack of papers, each one fragile, as if it had aged with the weight of its own history. Her thoughts wandered back to the letter, the one she and Liam had found together, the one that had begun all of this. It had been written so many years ago, yet the words on the paper had seemed so present, so real, as if the writer had known that one day someone would find their message. And then there was the unfinished melody, the piece that had been left behind, the music that had lingered in the air between her and Liam, as though it held the key to a mystery both terrifying and beautiful. Anna picked up one of the faded photographs that lay on the shelf, a picture of two people she didn't recognize. The faces were blurred by time, but there was something in the way they stood together that made her heart ache. A connection she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way their eyes looked at each other, so full of hope, but also something darker, something they had yet to fully understand. Her fingers tightened around the photo, and for a moment, she wondered if these two people had known the same fear that she did now, the fear of what they might uncover if they went too far into the past. The door opened, and Liam walked back in, his expression unreadable but focused. In his hand was a small wooden box, worn with age but carefully maintained. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. It wasn't necessary. The box, as simple as it seemed, held something important, something that could change everything. "I think I found it," Liam said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of his discovery. He placed the box on the table between them and sat down, his fingers lingering on the edges as if he were waiting for something. Anna's heart raced as she moved closer, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the box. It was heavier than she had expected, the wood smooth and cool to the touch. She lifted the lid carefully, not knowing what to expect. Inside, nestled in soft velvet, was a small key, a delicate thing, its surface carved with intricate designs that seemed to glow faintly in the light. "A key?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam nodded. "It was hidden in the back of the shop. I didn't know what it was for until I saw it, and then I realized. It's the key to the music box." The realization hit Anna like a wave. She had seen the music box before, the one that had been tucked away in the corner of the room, always out of sight, as though it were waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. The key was old, much older than the music box itself, but it was unmistakable. The intricate carvings matched the design of the box exactly. "I think this is it," Anna said, her voice trembling as she reached for the key. "The last piece." Liam watched her closely, his gaze never leaving her face. "Are you ready?" Anna hesitated for a moment, the weight of what they were about to do pressing heavily on her chest. She didn't know what they would find when they opened that box, but she knew one thing. They couldn't turn back now. They had come too far, and whatever they uncovered, they would face it together. "I think I am," she replied, her voice steady but filled with the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. With a deep breath, she turned the key in the lock. The soft click echoed in the quiet room, and for a moment, Anna couldn't breathe. She held her breath, afraid to disturb the fragile moment. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside the box was a delicate sheet of music, yellowed with age but still beautiful. The notes were familiar, hauntingly so, and Anna felt a sudden rush of recognition as she gazed at them. The music from the unfinished melody, the one that had been haunting them both, was there, in full, with one final line yet to be written. Anna's fingers trembled as she picked up the sheet. The final note, the note that had been missing, was just as she had imagined. It was the missing piece, the one that would complete the song. "Do you hear it?" Liam asked, his voice filled with awe. Anna closed her eyes, listening to the music in her mind, the melody that had been haunting her for so long finally coming together. It was beautiful, perfect, and yet, as she played the notes in her head, something else rose inside her. A realization. "The music isn't just for us," Anna murmured, her voice distant. "It's for them." Liam looked at her, a flicker of understanding passing between them. The past. It's not just a story. It's still alive in the music. In us. The music wasn't just an echo of forgotten times. It was a bridge, a link between the past and the present. And now, as they stood on the edge of that bridge, they realized that the key wasn't just to the music box. It was to everything they had been seeking. The truth, the connection, and maybe even the answers they had been looking for all along. Anna looked at Liam, and for the first time, she felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The key to the past had been found, and now the music could finally play its full melody. Chapter 19, The Last Note of December. The weight of the moment pressed down on Anna like the heaviest of blankets, smothering every breath, every thought. The melody she had heard in her mind, so vivid, so clear, was now tangible, etched in ink on the yellowed paper. It had taken her to the edge of everything she had known, pulling her into a world where music and memories intertwined, and where the past could no longer be ignored. Liam stood next to her, his presence steady and strong, though she knew that he too was feeling the pull of this discovery. He had seen the look in her eyes when she first heard the music, the way it had resonated with something deep inside her, something old and forgotten. But now, the truth was undeniable. The song that had once been lost to time was finally complete, and it had led them here, together, at this pivotal moment. Anna slowly stood from the table where the music lay, the final note still etched in her mind. She hadn't played it yet, hadn't given the world the last piece of the puzzle. There was no turning back. The melody, the key to the past, had come alive, but it was still unfinished. That last note, the one she had feared for so long, was the final piece, the one that would bridge the gap between what had been and what could be. "You know," she said softly, her voice a whisper against the silence of the room. "This song, it isn't just about them, is it?" Liam, who had been silently observing her, his hand still resting lightly on the box, met her gaze. His brow furrowed slightly, as if the realization was just beginning to take shape in his own mind. "No," he replied slowly, his voice quiet, as if afraid to disturb the fragile moment they shared. "It's not just for them. It's ours too." Anna's heart swelled with something she couldn't quite name, something between hope and fear, between love and loss. She turned back to the music on the table and ran her fingers over the sheet, tracing the delicate lines of the final note. "We've been so afraid of what this song means," Anna murmured. "But it's been here all along, hasn't it? Waiting for us to be ready." Liam stepped closer, his footsteps light against the wooden floor. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but insistent. "We were ready, Anna. We've been ready for a long time." His words carried weight, like the steady rhythm of the song they had yet to finish. It was true. They had both been waiting for this moment, for the truth to surface, for the past to be laid bare, for the music to complete itself. But the real question now was what would come next. Anna took a deep breath, the air around her cool and crisp, as though she were standing at the threshold of something monumental. She looked at the final note one more time, the fragile thread that connected the past and present. With a steady hand, she lifted the pen beside the music and hesitated, her mind racing. "It's time, isn't it?" she asked, not really expecting an answer. Liam's reply came as a soft, but certain, murmur. "Yes, it's time." With one final breath, Anna placed the pen to the paper and wrote the last note. The sound that followed wasn't a sound at all, not at first. It was the feeling of something shifting, something old, something deep within both of them, settling into place. As if the music had been waiting, too, for the final piece to be written, for the final note to sound. And then, the world seemed to fill with sound. The music that had been lost for so long, now playing in the air around them. It was slow at first, the notes hesitant, as if testing the air. But then it gathered strength, building like a tide, rising higher and higher until it was impossible to ignore. Anna closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. Each note seemed to speak to her in a language she hadn't known she understood. It was like hearing something she had always known, but had never been able to express. And it was in that moment that she understood. This music, this melody, wasn't just about the past. It was about healing, about finding the lost pieces of oneself and putting them together, about facing the pain of yesterday and moving forward into tomorrow. Liam stepped forward, his hand finding hers again. His fingers intertwined with hers, and for a brief moment, it felt like the entire world had stopped, holding its breath. The music swirled around them, a symphony of emotions, grief, joy, longing, hope, each note speaking its own truth. As the song played on, the room seemed to shift, the shadows in the corners growing lighter, the air warmer. It wasn't just the music that had changed things, it was them, together. In this moment, they were more than just two people caught in a storm. They were two souls bound by a song that had waited for them to find it. They were the melody, the harmony, and the rhythm that had always been meant to be. The last note lingered in the air, its echo soft but filled with promise. And in that silence, Anna finally understood. It wasn't about completing a song. It was about what happened when they chose to play it. When they chose to face the past and let the music carry them forward. Liam's voice broke through the stillness, a whisper in her ear. "It's beautiful, Anna." She smiled, her heart full of emotions she couldn't quite name. "It is, and it always was." The final note faded, leaving a piece that Anna had never known before. And as she looked at Liam, the man who had been beside her every step of the way, she knew that this was just the beginning. The music had given them the key to the past, but now it was up to them to write the next chapter. Chapter 20, A New Year's Serenade. The snow had stopped falling, leaving a blanket of white across the streets outside the small, hidden-away room that had become their world in the past few days. The storm had passed, and with it, the tension that had held Anna and Liam in a vice-like grip. Now, the air was still, peaceful, like the calm after a symphony's final note. The song they had rediscovered, the music that had bound them together, had ended, but the echo of it lingered, reverberating through their hearts, through their lives. Anna sat at the piano once more, her fingers tracing the keys as if she were still searching for something, a hidden melody, a forgotten harmony, a piece of herself she hadn't yet unlocked. The sheet music lay in front of her, the final note, the final chord still fresh in her mind. It was as if the music had woven itself into her soul, and every note she played now was a continuation of the story they had begun together. Liam, standing in the doorway, watched her with quiet admiration. The way the soft glow of the room reflected off her hair, the way the lines of her face had softened since they had started this journey. It was as if the weight of the past had been lifted, and she was finally free to be herself. To be the woman who had once been lost in the shadows of her own grief, but who now stood in the light, ready to embrace whatever the future had to offer. He stepped into the room, his footsteps light on the wooden floor. There was no need for words between them. After everything they had been through, the music, the discovery, the emotions that had surfaced, there was a silent understanding, an unspoken connection that needed no explanation. Anna's fingers hovered above the keys for a moment, as if she were waiting for something. Then, with a soft breath, she played the final chord once more. The sound filled the room, resonating deep within her. It was perfect, as it always had been, but now it was more than just a song. It was a memory, a promise, a love letter to the past and to the future. The note held the weight of everything they had endured and everything they had yet to face. Liam moved closer, kneeling beside her. He reached out, his hand gently resting on hers. His touch was warm, grounding her in this moment, as if reminding her that they were in this together, that they had always been in this together. "It's done," he said softly, his voice rich with emotion. "The song, it's finished." Anna nodded, her eyes never leaving the piano keys. She had been afraid, at first, that the final note would signify an ending, an end to the story they had started. But now she understood. The final note was just the beginning. The music would never truly end. It would live on in them, in the love they had found, in the choices they would make from here on out. "I know," she whispered. "But it's not just a song, Liam. It's us." Liam smiled, his eyes warm, full of understanding. "I know." He stood, offering her his hand, and for a moment, Anna hesitated. There was still so much left unsaid, so much left to do. The past still loomed in the corners of her mind, its shadows stretching far beyond the walls of the room. But then she remembered the music, the song that had carried them through the darkness, and she realized that, just like the melody, she was ready to move forward. Taking his hand, Anna stood, and together they walked to the window. The world outside had changed. The snow was no longer falling, and the sky had cleared to reveal a star-filled night. It was as if the universe itself had shifted, aligning in perfect harmony with the music they had played. "This is it," Anna said softly, her voice barely more than a murmur. "The beginning of something new." Liam nodded, his hand finding hers once more. The start of a new melody. As they stood there, looking out into the night, Anna realized that everything had led them to this moment. The storm, the silence, the music, it had all been necessary for them to understand that they didn't need to be defined by the past. They were both free now, free to embrace the future, to live the lives they had always dreamed of, together. "Anna," Liam whispered, his voice a soft promise in the stillness. "You and me, we're a melody. And no matter what comes next, I know we'll always find our way back to each other." Anna turned to him, her eyes shining with the reflection of the stars outside. "Always," she replied, her voice filled with certainty. And as the first notes of a new song began to play in her heart, she realized that the final chord was not the end. It was the beginning of a new melody, a melody that was theirs to create, together. And so, with one last glance at the world outside, they stepped into the future. The music would never stop, not as long as they were together.